Hello and welcome to part three of our TechBytes series on mobility in the age of big data, analytics, data, and devices, presented by Slash.media and sponsored by Panasonic. This is part three, managing enterprise mobility, in-house versus managed services. I'm Michael Krieger, and with the global mobile workforce set to increase from 1.45 billion to 1.87 billion in 2022, accounting for more than 42% of the global workforce, mobility management has become a significant area of responsibility for IT. So how can companies cost effectively manage and secure their mobile devices? And can managed services make a difference? Here to discuss that with me today is Jim Dempsey, National Sales Manager from Panasonic. Jim, thanks again for joining me.
Glad to be here.
So let's start off with SaaS. SaaS options available for decades have trained businesses to acquire all kinds of IT functionality on a subscription basis. Does this work for mobility management as well?
Yeah, I think that concept of SaaS has been out there, like you said, for a while. We're seeing right now, it's really we're on the forefront of that with the hardware, if you will, the edge devices being able to be folded into that. Because in a true SaaS model, it's a kind of a utility, right? I'm not signing a big contract. I'm paying by usage, and again on the hardware side, I think the software went a little bit went sooner than the hardware side did to try and figure out the business model and how you can make this device that you offer basically just a utility, paying for access. So a lot of customers are looking at and we're having these conversations with them about how they can move to a OpEx model from a CapEx model with a lot of what they do and scale their environments. So particularly we were talking to a retailer the other day about their warehouse operations. And, during the course of the year, they may be running at 100 employees right in their warehouse. But when they get to the Christmas time, they almost double that, with a lot of the temporary workers that come in for the holiday. So what they would like is to see, okay, when I scale up to those 200 employees, I don't want to have to buy, 200 devices and have 100 devices just sitting there for a majority of the year doing nothing. Would I be able to have some sort of a structure in place with my provider where as my needs grow, I can scale up and down, based on what I need at the time. So when I get in my busy season, the additional devices come in. When it goes away, they go away, and I pay a predictable per user price or per transaction price. So a lot of folks are looking at that these days. Certainly on the enterprise side, like I said, we're kind of on the forefront of that right now. Looking at how that marriage of the hardware and the software come together, but there's definitely some opportunities for customers to look at. There's some benefits, to that, right? Because it becomes predictable, scalable. But then, there's a new business operating environment that, creates its own challenges that just have to be talked through and thought through, as customers are looking to take that step or evaluating, is that the right play for them?
So let's talk a little bit more of that. What are some of the advantages of in-house versus managed? Some of the pros and cons.
Yeah, certainly. We're having these conversations about the inside outside. Typically the larger organizations have well-established IT departments. They have more resources, quite frankly, just put it that way, where they're probably slower to move to a SaaS environment than say a small to mid-sized company that doesn't have as many IT assets. So when you look at the trade-offs, there's obviously security. There's public cloud, and then there's private cloud where we do have some large customers will deploy cloud, but it will be within their own environment. So it's kind of it's a cloud, but it's behind their firewall. So that's an option that they use to get some of the advantages and functionality that you can get from a cloud environment, but without maybe some of the potential exposure that you have when now it's out. If it's a public cloud, there's always the concern of privacy, scalability. So if I'm on the same servers as everybody else, what happens during the busy season? Does my system slow down? Are there potential for hacking, for data that private data for my company, also for my customers getting compromised? So certainly for the smaller companies, I think the opportunities in this cloud environment are probably more attractive because rather than having to hire some full-time additional IT assets, which in today's world, that's labor is the biggest part of anything. So for the smaller company, if they can do more with less and leverage technology by partnering with companies and platforms that offer this again predictable cloud-based, consumption-based type model works very well for them. A little more complex when you get to the bigger companies, multinational companies. Again, they're going to have their own staff. They're also going to, in many cases, be writing their own applications too. So a lot of the cloud, push has come from really the application side. So if I'm buying a third-party application, if my provider that I'm buying from has that capability, that's an option for me. But if it's an in-house built app, that means as a company now I have to build a cloud infrastructure, or I have to outsource that, or engage with, say, an Amazon or one of the other providers, Microsoft in that space to provide the functionality that I'm going to need to execute on a cloud environment.
Are there particular use cases then, or industries better suited to going one way or the other, or what should be the determining factors?
Yeah, I wish there was a rule, right, that we could say if X, then Y, and it's really coming down to each customer is different, right? I heard someone say the other day, well, it's the same but different, right? Conceptually, you're thinking about the same types of things, whether you're a small company or a large company, and in whatever industry you might be in, but then it becomes different because each industry, some like on the utility side, they're still very capex, and in the oil and energy market, still very capex, and a lot of what they do is tied to the price of oil, right? So there's a uniqueness to what they do there, and their willingness to invest either on a capital basis or an OpEx basis. So it's really across the board. And what we're seeing right now is more what we consider a traditional environments moving from a on-premise, licensed server, type of environment to a cloud-based environment. So one of the areas which was just we saw the other day, the shift starting to happen is warehouse management, as an example, has traditionally been a very heavy inside the four walls, if you will, implementation where the customer has their data centers, they put in the redundancy, they're running their ERP systems with their warehouse management. Now we're seeing some providers coming up on the warehouse side where we're actually seeing some SaaS-based models for warehouse management, which is interesting. Been traditionally a very on-premise type of environment. I think when you look at some of the first movers, you look at a lot of the smaller field service type organizations. You see a lot of cloud activity has been happening out there first, just because of the nature of the way that they operate their business, and certainly some franchise type smaller service organization models work very well for deploying software very quickly across a lot of different geographies and users across the network.
What is the impact of managed services on the IT department in terms of staffing and budget?
Yeah, so that's again going to depend on really when we look at the customer. Do they have an IT department with the staff today to execute in what they need to? If it's certainly the benefit to the smaller companies is they can scale, they can act like a bigger company by leveraging the managed services, because really at that point they're executing a contract with a managed service provider to say on a service level, right? It's not so much about, well, there's technology, right, that's built in there, but it's about a service level, so that they can scale, like I mentioned, when they need to, but also they don't need to hire the resources to come in and handle that. They're not buying technology, like capital technology that may or may not be obsolete the day after they buy it. They have technology refresh in there so that they're always every say 3 years they're always getting the new thing. And it's all being handled and managed by their third-party company. So certainly advantage there. The bigger companies, they can also benefit from some managed services. There may be some gaps in their IT department, meaning that there's some things that maybe they don't have the expertise to handle that there's an opportunity to plug in. So what we're seeing in the bigger companies, it's not an all or nothing. In the smaller environments, we see more of that where, hey, this MSP is taking over the whole shooting match. And then in larger organizations, we're seeing some implementations where they're filling gaps, right, where their IT organization doesn't have coverage to provide that capability.
That makes sense. So, Panasonic, of course, also has these fantastic rugged mobile devices that we've been talking about. What's the importance of IT's role in selecting rugged mobile devices, or should this just be left up to the line of business users?
Yeah, there's an intersection there. So it used to be that IT would just say, here's the standard, and that's what you get. But in today's world, technology is being pushed to the IT department. So we still have the traditional model of what IT does and their role and being the guardian, if you will, of the infrastructure and making sure that security and access to the network and all that's happening. But certainly with the the new worker generations coming up that are much more technology savvy, and the business units, bringing more needs, right, wanting to present a certain image to the customers that they serve, using some of these newer technologies. That technology is being pushed back at the IT department. So a much more complex environment for IT departments today, a lot more choices. That's, I guess, good and bad, right? Because you have a lot of things to choose from. You have multiple operating systems, form factors, different types of security and types of use cases for the, your users out there that the IT has to think about. So it is a very complex world, but certainly from when we talk to the IT departments and even the business units, obviously our value proposition is enterprise technology. So we're providing the technology that no matter what the use case is, when we engage with a customer, we want to make sure the technology that we're recommending to them, fulfills all the needs that the IT department has, can bridge the old systems, the old process to the new process that maybe the business unit's pushing on them, and can provide again to the business units and the users technology that they like, can use, and has the feature set that they need to execute on what their business, their mission is. So it really is a balancing act. We're seeing more, though, more so today than ever, the business units and the users having more of an impact on what happens with regards to standards and how IT is managing and implementing their technology.
So here's the $64 question: Are ruggedized mobile devices managed differently from consumer grade mobile devices?
This again, I guess I said the same but different before. So, at the end of the day, they're computing devices. But one of the things that is challenging in the management of technology is that consumer devices weren't built with a lot of the features that an enterprise company would need, and particularly when you look at securing data and devices and making it a safe environment. So enterprise class devices are typically better suited out of the box with features and functions that, say, in a mobile device management deployment, will allow a company to create an image, help with the deployment of those devices very easily out of the box, but then also lock the device down. So what that means is when I'm a user in a corporate environment, if I've got a single purpose that I'm doing, say I'm maybe in the warehouse and my job is to pick orders and boxes and things. When I log on, the only application when I log on that I see is the application that I'm allowed to see. I can't get into the settings. I can't go on to YouTube. I can't start, texting with my buddies and friends. So the IT department is going to use that we call kiosk mode to lock that down. So again, consumer devices maybe not as easily done, because they're not built for that. They're built for just the single user who's just going to be doing whatever they want to do. Whereas in the IT world, on the enterprise side, those devices, number one, I'm going to lock it down, but then I have to protect the data. And then how, I segment my data, is much more manageable on a enterprise class device than it is on a consumer device.
So here's a genie that won't go back in the bottle, the bring your own device BYOD phenomenon. How does that fit into a managed services environment?
Yeah, it's interesting. That comes up a lot. I was at a meeting the other day. What was they said? A BYOD stands bring your own disaster. That was what they called it, right? So there's certainly some benefit to it, and I jokingly say that because in some cases, it does work. In other cases, it does not. And again, from an IT department, one of the things that again they try and do is they try and create standards, because they're the ones that get the call when something's not working. And so, in many cases, if I've got one application, but I have, 100 users using 98 different types of devices, when that user calls in, I'm not quite sure, okay, what device do you have? Was it fully certified? It makes things more complex, right, for the IT departments when you have a lot of that disparate technology out there. So, BYOD, then there's other things about data. So, if I've got my personal device and I show up at work and I say, hey, this is great. You're going to use this device for your corporate world. I'm putting mobile device management software that can help you lock it down, track it, and manage it. I don't necessarily want my company, having access to my personal data. And the other piece is that, and mobile device management solutions have gotten pretty good about this, but the type of data, personal data versus corporate data, how much personal data will I allow on a device? Because the device, once it gets full, if I can no longer write, say, corporate data to it, then that becomes a problem. And users don't want their personal data being deleted by their company, because the priority for the company is corporate data trumps personal data. And then there's also the fact that you could potentially on one device take corporate data, corporate sensitive data, and it could get out, into the personal side. So, I know there's legal implications to that, certainly when you're talking about healthcare, retail, and certainly in a military type law enforcement environment, there's a lot of evidence and rules that go along there. So yeah, it's a complex world when you look at that. Again, it's a conversation we'll have with our customers, and in some cases it may be a fit, but typically in an enterprise class environment, it creates a lot more complexity for the IT department to manage all those moving parts.
No doubt. Thanks again, Jim. That's all the time we have. I want to thank everyone for watching. In our additional resources section, you can find parts 1 and 2 of this TechBytes series. Part 1, data analytics in the mobile user, and Part 2, deploying rugged devices to ensure a reliable experience for the mobile worker. You'll also find a couple of additional resources: identifying and overcoming obstacles to achieve enterprise mobility excellence. That's a mouthful. And something about Panasonic Professional Services, who I'm sure can deliver all of the managed services we were talking about today. Thanks again to Panasonic for making this TechBytes series possible. For Slashdot Media, this is Michael Krieger.